Rodney Johnson Jr. is the best kept secret for this Louisville defense.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering the University of Louisville, 4th year hosting this show. 4-year launch anniversary was on Saturday. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. We are beginning the 5-part top 15 player rankings for the Louisville football team, with rankings 15 to 13 on the countdown today. The best kept secret on this defense, and 2 interior defensive linemen looking for breakout seasons in 2025. We'll tell you who those players are and discuss why they're on this list throughout the show today. But first, today's episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping notes on the top 15 player rankings. Look, it's all opinionated. You are probably going to disagree at some point. This is just my personal rankings. And I will say that, last year, thinking back to last year's, and this is the third installment that we've done over the past couple of off seasons. Last year's rankings weren't easy, but they were easier because of the key players coming back. You had a couple of notable SEC transfers coming in, some Power 4 transfers. This year, it's hard to kind of project because you don't bring as many players back from last year that played key roles. And not to mention, a good amount of the transfers are from the non-Power 4 level. So it's all about, how those skill sets are going to translate, how they project to the next level, and more. I will say that my criteria isn't like one thing or another. It's a mixture of a couple different things. It's a combination of the value that player brings to the program in respect to the position they play. So, for example, quarterback is going to be one of the more valuable spots on the team. And whether that's fair or not, it's being factored into the conversation. Overall talent level, statistical production, and even how a certain player compares and ranks amongst his peers in conference play. So, it's a judgment thing. It's not set in stone. It's really just kind of based upon what your opinion is. But let's go ahead and get started with the rankings. Number 15 for me is the best kept secret on the Cardinals defense. That is Southern University transfer Rodney Johnson Jr. Rodney Johnson Jr. Spent 3 seasons with the Jaguars, 1 season before that with Stephen F. Austin, but really got his playing time with the Jaguars, of course, as a cornerback. Over 24 tackles in all of the 3 seasons he played. Double-digit passes deflected in his career. 1 forced fumble and 1 interception, both of those coming in his final year in 2024. And the reason why I think he's going to be the best kept secret for this defense is that not many know about him. If you do, you probably don't know just how good he's been. And, nationally, you're going to see Rodney Johnson's name on a transfer portal spreadsheet, or a list, but you're not going to really understand what his impact looks like this season. I think Rodney Johnson Jr. is CB1 for this team. And that's why he lands on this list at number 15, because even though he might not necessarily be Quincy Riley, and that's okay, not many players are, I think he's going to be a more than serviceable piece in this secondary. 6'2", 200 pounds from New Orleans. You talk to some people around the program, and he looked really good in spring ball. looked really, really good in spring ball, going up against some great receivers, some great weapons, and he held his own. Like the size that he has, that physicality really allowed him to shine in spring ball, in the spring game, and it's even trickling into fall camp. Like some early talk out of fall camp is that Rodney Johnson Jr. continues to impress. Like I had someone not in the program, but close to the program, text me multiple times this summer, while having a conversation. He kept mentioning the name Rodney Johnson. It's like, look, watch out for this guy. Like, this guy is going to be really good. He's going to be better than advertised. And you always have to wonder, well, how's a player from a non-power forward going to join the ACC and project, right? Like, what's going to happen with that skill set? How much is it going to translate? And I think for Rodney Johnson, having that size, having that physicality and the aggression that he plays with, one of those players that, hey, veteran presence that I believe that the upside is there to be a pretty solid cornerback in the league. I think at the worst, he's going to be serviceable, and that's okay. If you have a serviceable cornerback, that's good. But for a CB1, like, you want your cornerback to be a little bit more than serviceable. And I think that Rodney Johnson is going to be able to be that for the Louisville Cardinals. And the reason why he lands at number 15 and not lower is because I think that, of course, he's better than advertised. I think that the role that he's going to play at CB1 lands him on this list. But why is he not higher up this list? Well, I just think that, first of all, you're going to tell the majority of this list is filled with offensive players, especially up at the top. But, the Cardinals are replacing so much on the defense. So, there's not really many players that are coming back where you're like, yeah, that guy should be in the top 15. And even guys that are transferring in, like I think Rodney Johnson, it's kind of one of those free-for-all moments. And I think that that's going to land him on this list. I also kind of went back and forth with some other players, like some honorable mentions were Nate Kariski at tight end, kind of had him right there. A couple of offensive linemen were in the mix for number 15 and much more. So Rodney Johnson being at number 15, to be one of the top 15 best players on the team, I think is really awesome. I also read something, I forget what publication it was from, but it was just a nice story, one of those feel-good stories where said like he had to work double shifts after football at previous stops. And that's just like one of those, like, I am cheering so hard for Rodney Johnson to succeed. Like he's one of my, I think he's going to be a fan favorite on this team. Like he's one of those players, like I'm personally cheering the most for, is like, we need this guy to do well, of course, with the defense, but like it goes beyond just like team success. Like I want him to be able to use this year to show NFL teams like, hey, look, I know that my path isn't traditional, but I have a future in the National Football League, and I would love to see him have a good year to be able to bring that dream to life. What does the statistical production look like at cornerback? The past 2 years, he's recorded over 30 tackles. I think that the tackles number is probably going to be pretty similar. I would say if we're talking about like a statistical prediction, I'll go 35 total tackles here. We'll go with, I'm going to say 35 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and 6 passes broken up. I think that that's a really good season. That's a career year for him with the Cardinals. And like I said, I think that this is just one of those untraditional situations to where someone that comes from a non-power 4 school jumps to the power 4 and sort of had that diamond in the rough skill set all along, and veteran presence that's going to be able to make it happen for the Cardinals. So Rodney Johnson Jr. at number 15. When we come back, we're going to tell you who number 14 is. It's an interior defensive lineman looking to stay healthy and have a full breakout season. We'll tell you who it is when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, first I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies, unlike me, or you're just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Because let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and to stay energized. Like for me, like my friends like to have like early crack of dawn tea times. And I'm like, man, I'm still half asleep. And then I started to utilize 5 Hour Energy. And I'm like, I'm beating them to the course. I'm on the putting green and I'm ready to go 30 minutes before that tea time. So be like me. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5 followed by ourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. It's the 4th season of Locked On Louisville, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. We are back in the full swing of things. Like August starts the new season of Locked On Louisville, and I'm excited to be able to release my personal top 15 player rankings for the Louisville football program. Number 15, Rodney Johnson Jr. Number 14 is an interior defensive lineman that is aiming to have an absolute breakout season. I'm talking about Rene Konga. 6'4", 290 pounds from Ottawa, Ontario. Spent 3 seasons playing at Rutgers. And if you remember, if you're like me, if you follow football pretty closely, when Louisville got linked to this guy, I don't think I was the only one that was like, what are we doing here, Jeff? Because, I mean, let me read you. 2021, he had 1 tackle. 2022, he had 6 tackles. 2023, he had 8 tackles. He had 2 career sacks and 1 forced fumble in 3 seasons. He was like a end of the rotation defensive lineman for the Scarlet Knights, and I just didn't know what the Cardinal coaching staff saw in him. That's not to say that they shouldn't have gone after him. I was just kind of confused. But when you saw that Louisville was going after him and Kentucky was going after him and multiple other Power 4 teams were going after him, you're like, okay, there's something there either on tape or with the test results or the measurables that college coaching staffs just believe in. And when Rene Konga played this past season, you saw it. He had a really impressive year. 20 tackles, 2.5 sacks. Okay, why is that so impressive? Well, for 2 reasons. Number one, those statistical numbers are more than his entire career years combined. Like all of the seasons before last year at Louisville combined does not match up statistically to what Rene Konga did in 2024 as a rotational player. But the reason why this is even more impressive is because the back half of the season, he wasn't really able to see the field as much due to injuries. Like he appeared in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the first 5 games of the year, missed a couple games, played against Boston College, Stanford, Pitt, UK, Washington, but in the back half of the year had dealt with some injuries here and there, which sidelined him from an overall standpoint. Not all the time, but he sat more than he wanted to due to injury. So I think it goes without saying that he's got to stay healthy. That's the first thing, is that if Rene Konga stays healthy, he's going to have a really good year. And he's projected to start at that nose tackle position for the Cardinals. Those that don't know what nose tackle means, it's basically the defensive lineman that lines up over the center. Rene Konga will be able to line up at that nose tackle spot Showed last season the ability to offer interior pass rush, which is such a luxury for the trenches. And look, this is a defensive line that sort of came out of the gate and stumbled. Like, they didn't play all that well. They weren't getting much push, and it was across the board. Like, the Cardinals defense wasn't the greatest, and it kind of started up front with the front seven. And now, granted, it got better as the year went on. Like, toward the end of the year, Louisville's interior defensive line as a whole, they looked better. And then they kept improving. Sorry, I've got the hiccups. They kept improving, but how much of that was Stanford? How much of that was Pittsburgh with no Eli Holstein for the majority of that game? How much of that was Kentucky, who couldn't score on the first 11 people that clicked on this video? And even then, they started a third-string quarterback. Sorry. So, like, it's probably a little bit of column A, column B, but I do have high hopes for this defensive line. And mostly because of who is projected to start. And Rene Konga is going to be one of those starters or projected starters on the interior. So I think that the ability for him to not only adequately defend the run, but also offer pass rush for the interior lands him on this list. I think that it's all about projection of the top 15. And of course, the prerequisite here and the caveat is that he's got to stay healthy. But if he stays healthy, Rene Konga is a top 15 player on this team. The only reason why I think, well, let's start this way. I think that because of that's why he's on this list. Like, I think that when healthy, he's got the talent, he's got the overall production level, and he's going to have the opportunity to be able to wreak havoc from the middle of that defensive line. But the reason why he's not higher up this list is because I do think that, defensive line, it's going to be a by committee approach. I think that the Cardinals are going to rotate. They brought some transfers in, Denzel Lowry, and a couple, Jerry Lawson. Like, they brought in a couple guys from the FCS level, and then some of the younger players that could factor into the rotation on the interior. But, that rotation, I think, prevents him from being a little bit higher on this list. So what does that production look like? He had 20 tackles in 2024. He had 2.5 sacks and a couple tackles for loss. Like, for a defensive lineman, like, you won't really see so much involved with the overall tackle numbers. Like last year, compare it to a guy like Des Tell, who had 28 tackles and 1.5 sacks. And then compare it to a guy like Jared Dawson, who transferred to Notre Dame, and he only had 19 tackles, but he had 4 sacks from the interior. I think that the tackle numbers are going to be fairly similar to what we saw last year. 20 tackles. I'm going to say, with the rotation that we're going to see, gosh, it's tough because when he was healthy, he played pretty solid, like 7 tackles against Georgia Tech. And how much did injuries play into that? I'm going to say 25 total tackles. I think that we're going to see increase in that overall number, but it's the sack number that I feel like is going to grow. Like 2.5 sacks last year. Okay. He had 2.5 sacks. Man, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to say he increases that number by 2. I'm going to say 4.5 sacks. I think Rene Konga, 25 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Those are pretty sizable expectations, especially as a pass rusher. But with him being penciled in starter at the moment at that nose tackle position, and if he stays healthy, I think that those are achievable statistics. And not to mention, I think he's going to fill that Des Tell role really well. So I'm high on Rene Konga's skill set, and I think that with another year in the ACC, with another year in the system, with a healthy season, I mean, I think the sky is the limit for this guy. on the interior of the defensive line. But it's not just him. When we come back, I'm going to talk about another interior defensive lineman that's hoping to kind of follow that same trajectory that Rene Konga is projected to have. We'll discuss who that is when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, today's episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Look, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose that spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music really should be about making memories and not dealing with all the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes into play. I mentioned this once. I'm going to mention it a couple more times before you get absolutely sick of it. I loved going to see Creed in concert. Like, I'm not a huge rock fan, but Creed is one of my favorite rock groups. And I got tickets to that concert the day of the concert on Game Time when I knew that ticket prices were going to go down. Like, I clicked on the seat hyperlink and it showed me the panoramic view from that seat. And I was like, oh, these are nice seats. The price is going down. I got the best of both worlds. And it just made the overall experience as hassle-free as it could. And I realized that, Game Time is the only place that I'm going to utilize, not only for music, but sports, comedy, theater, you name it. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, so just a heads up. When you listen to this or view this, good chances I'm already going to be out of town. I'm going to be out of town for a good portion of this week. The only reason I say that is because if something like breaking news happens during the week, I'm going to do my best to have an episode, but the likely outcome is that I have these pre-recorded top 15 player rankings episodes that will be able to hold us over until I get back at the end of this week. But again, it was going to be the plan regardless if I was in town or not. But just want to give you that that note in case like something happens. You're like, who aren't you talking about it? These are already pre-recorded. So, but number 13, we had the first two. Number 15, Rodney Johnson Jr. Number 14, Rene Konga. Number 13, I'm sticking on the interior of the defensive line. Another player that I believe is going to have a breakout season, transferred to Louisville before last season. That is number 94, Jordan Gerard, 6'2", 295 pounds from Florida. Spent 3 seasons with Florida International. Played in 1, 2, 3, 4. What was it? He recorded statistics in 6 games. I think he played in 7, if I'm not mistaken. But Jordan Gerard last season was, it wasn't, a match to what he did at Florida International. Like 2022, he had 34 tackles and 3 sacks. 2023, 38 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. Like 2024 was a step back. He had 22 tackles, but he had 2.5 sacks and his first pass deflection, and a couple of tackles for loss. Had that, I think it was that fumble recovery against Miami that Thor Griffith knocked the ball out against Mark Fletcher, and Jordan Gerard fell on it, if I'm not mistaken, in the third quarter. But I think with Gerard, it's sort of the same thing. He dealt with injuries to begin the year, wasn't really able to play, and didn't play until he got in against Notre Dame. And of course, that was 5 games into the season? 4 games into the season. So it took a while for him to get going. But when he got going, of course, he left his mark. 4 tackles against SMU, 3 against Virginia, 4 against Miami. He had a sack in that game against Miami, a sack in the Sun Bowl against Washington, 3 tackles and half a sack against Clemson. And it was overall a really good season. And I think the same thing with Rene Konga. Jordan Gerard is projected to start alongside of him. Like, you had Destel and Jared Dawson, and now you're replacing those two with Rene Konga and Jordan Gerard, respectively. So, of course, it's sort of kind of the same rationale for why he's on this list. And it's because the prerequisite is being healthy. But if he's able to have a clean bill of health in 2025, signs are pointing to him being extremely disruptive on the middle, anchoring that Cardinals defensive line. Like Conga, sort of that well-rounded approach to where he's stout as a run defender, but really good pass rusher from the interior. Like having two guys that can get after the quarterback from the middle of the line, like that's such a luxury to have, and something honestly that Louisville, I mean, you go back the past 20 years, like there are many seasons where the Cardinals just haven't had that. So that's why he's on this list. And the reason why he's above Rene Konga to me is because Gerard showed more with less opportunities. Like he appeared in less games and had equally, if not more, impressive play. Like had more tackles, still 2.5 sacks. I think that with a full season, with a clean bill of health, I think that Gerard has the better season. But it's not like this huge difference. Like truthfully, if I could, without giving a cop-out answer, this would be like a 13A, 13B. It's just like, okay, how do you differentiate 14 and 13? Like who gets the edge there? And I just went with who did more with their opportunities, and Gerard did slightly more. I think that their projections are pretty similar. Both are going to be disruptive interior defensive linemen for this unit that are likely going to start, and that's why they're both on this list, and that's why I determined who was 13 and who was 14. And of course, the reason why he's not higher up the list to me is because, like I said, there's going to be a rotation of guys on the interior. And I do kind of wonder, can both of these guys stay healthy? So the rotation, the question marks still to be determined. But what does a statistical season for Jordan Gerard look like? I'm assuming that he's going to stay somewhat relatively healthy. I'm going to go, gosh, this is a huge, huge gamble to say this, but I mean, I think Gerard's going to match Rene Konga. I think he's going to be a 4.5 sack guy because, I mean, you have to replace Jared Dawson's, 4 sacks. And I think that, you replace the 4 sacks between Conga and Jordan Gerard. So I think that both of those guys are going to end up with 4.5 sacks. Total tackles, I think he's going to hit at least 30. I think that he's going to factor into the run defense more, and probably the best run defender on the team on the interior of the defensive line. So I'm going to go with 30 tackles. I'm going to say 4.5 sacks, and we'll go with a forced fumble as well. So 30 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. So that's going to wrap up the first part of the 5-part installment of the top 15 player rankings. When we come back, 12, 11, and 10, we're staying on the defensive side of the ball, and some guys that are coming back and one that's transferring in. So stay tuned until tomorrow when I tell you who number 12, number 11, and number 10 are. Everyone have a great day. Great start to the week. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.